Welcome back. I'm in Ireland and I'm talking to Muad Dib about his new film 7/7 Ripple Effect 2, and we were just talking about the new information that's in this film that wasn't in the original. We had the arrival of Tony Farrell on the scene.
Yeah.
Just tell us how you've incorporated that into the film.
Well, Tony Farrell was, you've done interviews with him, so your regular viewers will know about Tony Farrell. Tony Farrell investigated 9/11 and then 7/7, and he watched my film, and he was the principal intelligence analyst for South Yorkshire Police for 12 years. He worked for the police for 17 years altogether, but he was the principal intelligence analyst for 12 of those 17 years, the last 12 years. And he made a report basically backing up my film.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, of course, he was asked to resign, or he was sacked, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And he's fighting unfair dismissal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've brought him into, and parts from your interviews, into 7/7 Ripple Effect 2, explaining that, you know, he, as a professional analyst of intelligence, you know, with many years of experience, he was actually the head of the department in which he worked, civilian head, because he's not actually a policeman, he was working for the police. And he concurs with everything that I've said.
Yeah. Now, in the film, you also mentioned Meredith Hughes?
Yeah, Meredith
Who
Hughes.
was Tony Farrell's ultimate boss?
Yeah,
the
he
Chief
was the
Constable of South Yorkshire Police.
That's right.
Now, tell us about his involvement on the day of 7/7.
On the day of 7/7, well, on the day of 7/7, he was actually not just the Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Police, which is based in Sheffield, but he was actually the head of ACPO, which is the Association of Chief Police Officers. So he was, in a way, he was the head of the police force in the country, in the UK. And he was in charge of the policing at Gleneagles, which was also happening on that day.
Just for viewers, on the day of 7/7 London bombings, there was a G8 summit with George Bush and all of the major leaders of various nations. So he was in charge of the security of that event.
That's right, yes. And he was also involved in the aftermath of the bombings and sorting all of that out. Along with DCI, which is Detective Chief Inspector Stephen Williams, also of South Yorkshire Police, who was Tony Farrell's immediate boss. And during the arguments between Tony Farrell and the police, because they wanted him to stick to the government line, to peddle the lies and all of that, and he refused, because that would have made him a criminal. It would have made him an accomplice to these crimes after the fact. And anyway, during the course of conversations that they had, DCI Stephen Williams actually told Tony Farrell, and I have this personally from Tony, that he was in London on that day taking part of the exercise, which shoots Peter Powers' later story of how he changed from there being 1,000 people involved in the exercise to it only being a desktop exercise with him and 5 members of Reed Elsevier Publishing Company. For DCI Stephen Williams from South Yorkshire Police to be down in London on that day taking part in the exercise proves that Peter Power lied. Peter Power was also in the BBC Conspiracy Files 7/7, you know, having a go at me. So.
Right, and he completely changed his story from saying there was 1,000 people involved in this exercise, and suddenly it was just a tabletop exercise.
Yes, exactly.
Now, at the inquest, we had some information come out, notably that there were no post-mortems carried out on any of the bodies. And you highlight that quite well in your film.
Yes, I do, yes. It's important. How can you have an inquest with no post-mortem? It's never heard of. Always, a post-mortem is supposed to, an inquest is supposed to have a post-mortem, a coroner's inquest. And none were done, not one.
Holes in the carriages were inconsistent with the narrative.
Yeah.
i.e. there were 3 holes
Yeah.
in one carriage when
Yeah.
there should have only been 1, and neither of the
Yeah.
holes were near where the alleged bomber was. In
Ex-
fact, not one single person on the train even saw the alleged bomber.
Exactly.
Or, well, we've
Yeah.
got one witness on one of the trains
Yeah.
who had been in a coma. Danny Biddle, he's the only person, I believe,
Yeah.
who said he's seen any of the alleged terrorists.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we've got the explosives as well. So
Yeah,
there's-
the proof of the explosives, because they said that it was TAPT, homemade explosive. And TAPT is very, very volatile. You couldn't run with it. It's very, very volatile. If you did, you would risk blowing yourself up running a bit prematurely before you got to wherever it was you were planning to blow up in the first place. But it's usually only used in a small amount as an actual detonator for other explosives.
Yeah.
But TAPT, other than it being very, very volatile, it explodes without any flames or heat. It doesn't generate any flames or any heat. And we know from the famous Burns mask, the picture of the woman with the white Burns mask and with covering her face, we know that she was very badly burned, and other people were badly burned as well. So that's consistent with military grade high explosives. It's not consistent with TAPT that is supposedly brewed up in a bath.
Okay.
And if you talk to experts who know about how to prepare TAPT, they couldn't possibly have done it with the equipment that we were shown
Yes.
in this supposed bomb factory in 18 Alexandra Grove.
Well, tell us about Bruce Late, because he was on one of the tubes as well, wasn't he?
That's right.
What did he have to say? 'Cause he
Well-
was in BBC Conspiracy Files.
That's correct, yes. And he must be annoyed with them because they asked him to take part, interviewed him, took him to London, took him to the tubes, and had him point out where the explosion took place, where he was, where the explosion took place in the tube carriage,
Yes.
and that the floor had blown upwards as though there was a bomb underneath. And then the female narrator of the program tried to say that, oh, he was mistaken, he only thought. And that's not what he said. He said that's where it was, and it was under the floor, and it blew up. So I put that in, and I hope Bruce likes the fact that I backed up what he said.
Okay. I mean, this is one thing that they do in these hit pieces. They'll give the official conspiracy line, and they'll explain it, and then they'll have someone on, either in a suit or with letters after their name, who then knocks it down. And it's a series of setups and knockdowns right the way through to try and debunk every piece of evidence. With that objective, rather than looking at it with an open-minded view to get to the actual truth.
Which they're supposed to do under the BBC Charter, because their reporting is supposed to be fair and balanced at all times, and it obviously isn't.
Right. Now, this new version of Ripple Effect is quite a lengthy film.
Yes, it is, because there's an awful lot more evidence that's come out and detail that I've put in to explain. I'm just hoping that people will sit all the way through it, because it is a lot longer than the original film.
Okay.
I made the original film, as you know, I made it 56 minutes purposefully, so that it could have adverts put into it, and it could be shown on an hour slot on mainstream television, hoping that at least some company somewhere, or companies, would have the courage to show it. And after that, I had a lot of people who were researchers say, oh, why didn't you put this in, and why didn't you put that in and put the other in? And I said, I kept it short, sharp, and to the point, and I kept it at that length specifically so that it could be shown on an hour slot on television. And I'm hoping now, because a lot of people won't have the patience to sit through, and they don't have the attention span to sit through a long documentary, a long film. But I'm hoping that because of the success of the original film and how many people have enjoyed it, that will convince them to watch the new longer one.
Because I think everything that was in the original one is in this one.
Yes, I've just added stuff.
It's just been added to.
I've added to it,
Right.
Not at the end. I've added pieces all the way
throughout.
through it.
Yeah.
So if somebody is to start watching the new film and then think, oh, I've already seen it, don't, carry on watching it, because it's got a lot of new stuff in it.
Yeah. Now we're coming up to the anniversary,
Yeah.
which is obviously the 7th of July, the 7th anniversary of 7/7.
Yeah, so it'll be
And
777.
yeah. So
And
we are aware that the BBC are employing Renegade Pictures to make a new documentary, which
Yeah.
they've asked various people that I know, and everyone who I know has told them where to go, because they know it's just going to be another hit piece.
Yes.
They were specifically asking for people who do not believe
The official
official story. So they weren't specifically asking for anyone who has any evidence of the facts of what may have occurred.
No.
So they're looking for people who just do not believe the official story, rather than actually.
Yeah.
I mean, we can predict what it's going to be like.
Yeah, and then they will try to convince them on camera. They'll show them what they will claim is new information, and try and convince them that the government story is the correct one, and so that Ripple Effect and the other films that have been made are wrong.
So it's probably going to be it'll be slightly different to the Conspiracy Files program, which was trying to debunk the claims of people who've researched it. But instead, it looks like this one will be a bit like the road trip one, 9/11 road trip, where it's going to be exposing these people as fruitcakes, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I would imagine the intention is to be.
Yeah,
To attack the person rather than the claim or the evidence.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely.
And, well, we await to see what they bring out. Now, I would imagine they'll be bringing that out on the 7th of July.
Yeah, I would think so too. Because the 9/11 road trip was on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. So it will be on an anniversary, and because it's 7/7, it would make sense that it would be on the 7th anniversary.
So you're intending to bring your new film out on that particular date. So if people log online on that date, they'll be able to watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. And we are looking at ways to basically chop it up to get it shown on the Showcase channel within the Richplanet program. So that'll either be getting extra slots or making it into probably 3 episodes.
Okay.
Now, after you won your trial regarding their claim that you were trying to pervert the course of justice, and you clearly weren't. They originally, when they arrested you in Ireland, they confiscated a whole load of your stuff, including computers and printers and things, which you didn't get back for years. And then you were in London, staying in London, and obviously the police have to give you your stuff back. So they took your stuff from Ireland to London when they extradited you.
Yes, in the same vehicle.
Right. Okay. So tell us about what happened when you've asked for your stuff back.
Yeah, well, they took my stuff basically to try to stop me from making any more films. They took my DVD burner so that I couldn't make copies. Well, this is what they thought. They wanted to stop me making any more and sending any more copies out. They took all my computers, the burner. They took my printer. Now, in the arrest warrant, it states that the envelopes that I sent to the court were handwritten, but they took my printer. Okay, again, to try to stop me from being able to do anything. Right. You know, I needed the printer for making labels, for doing all kinds of stuff. Like, you need a printer. So there was absolutely no justification for them taking my printer, but they did. Along with some copies of the disc and other stuff. And that was taken, extradited along with me to England. And eventually, after I was found not guilty, they wanted to give me my property back in London, so that I would have to try to transport it all back here, which was their responsibility. They tried to get out of. You can't do that. You have to take my property back to where you took it from, and me back to Ireland. He said, oh, I don't have to do that. So I said, well, the European Arrest Warrant Act 2003 says that you do. And he went, oh, and I had my solicitor and barrister there.
Yeah.
So he knew that I had witnesses that I had quoted him the law, legislation.
Yeah.
So he said, "Oh, well, we'll have to see what we can do." And subsequent to that, I had a telephone conversation with him, and I asked them to take me back in the car that they'd brought me from Ireland, me with my property, back to where they'd taken us from, which would be the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he refused to do that. He said, "Oh, I don't have to do that." So, and he wanted to give me he thought it was fair to give me my property in London for me to have, and it was a lot of property,
Yeah.
for me to have the expense and the inconvenience of trying to get my stuff and me back home,
Right.
where they'd stolen me from, basically,
Yeah.
kidnapped me from, basically.
So they didn't. Did they pay you any transport costs to get home?
No.
They didn't.
No, they haven't given me any.
So they extradite you.
Yeah.
They stick you on a boat.
Yeah.
And then
But I had
put you in
expenses.
Wandsworth prison.
Yeah.
But then they don't even pay your fare back.
No. And they haven't given me anything.
Even
Plus,
though you're completely innocent of all charges.
they're obviously not. They're not honourable, decent people. None of them. And you know, when the court and this policeman who arrested me have no idea of what's right and what's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's something very wrong with the system.
And there is no compensation for someone who gets held in custody for 150 days or held in prison for 150 days awaiting a trial, and you're innocent.
Yeah.
I found that quite surprising. Or
Most people do.
The-
I've
the-
had people, when I've given talks, I gave a talk to the Kent Freedom Movement in Gravesend, and the people said to me, are they going to compensate you for what they've done to you?
Mm.
And I said, well, I would hope so. I said, but I can't find anybody in the legal profession who is willing to take a claim on my behalf for compensation, because it was 157 days.
157.
Plus all the travelling, you know, the expenses, everything that it cost me, and getting back here, and all of that. And I cannot, and I've asked, you've asked on my behalf, other people have asked, they've actually contacted solicitors and things, and I can't get anybody who is willing to go against the system, because they all feed off it.
Right. All right then, my dear. Well,
and also, I didn't get my stuff back. DS Stephen Walker said he would have my property sent by courier back to Ireland, and it took months before my property arrived. And when it did arrive, my computer tower had been damaged. It had been dinted. They have absolutely no concept of what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And when the police and the courts have no concept of what's right and what's wrong, the country is in a very bad state.
Sure. All right then, my dear. Well, we're going to go for another break, and after the break, we're going to be talking about the area called Tara in Ireland.